Well, it didn't come to us. It's not working again, Mitch. I somehow need to test this 6 times before we get started. Whatever, it's another beautiful Friday, which means it's time again for another episode of Doorstock. My name is Bach. I'll be your host for the show. Joining me on the broadcast, as always is the case, Mr. MagicHelmet. There's a lot to talk about in the Counter-Strike world as things have been heating up despite the fact that we are in a player break, so there's no active matches going on, but the drama is still continuing to develop, as is often the case during the player breaks, and it actually is a continuation this week of what we talked about last week. We talked about the fact that coming into the player break, we're likely to see a lot of roster changes, roster swaps, teams juggling players around, and the first has already happened, and it's kind of a doozy. But before we get into it, Mitch, how's your week been going? How you feeling today, good sir? How's the pupper?
The pupper is fantastic. She's, I think, really enjoying her new home. As I mentioned before, she was using a puppy mill when she was brought up and then was in a rescue for 3 months. The rescue was great. They treated her really well. But I think she's really adjusted to my place. I think she wished she had a bigger yard to run in, which is nice because I'm actually going to be going to my brother's housewarming party. He's got this
Nice.
big old yard. So I'm going to go take her there. And they also have a dog, so she'll be able to socialize with another dog instead of just having to deal with me all day. So she's great. And otherwise, just busy with work. It feels like it's nonstop, but it's good to be busy right now. So things are good. How's the home improvement going?
It's going. Yeah. I'm hopeful that I can get a lot of it done this weekend. So I bought all of this stuff to revamp my desk setup. So I have a new standing desk frame. I've got the top built, got 3 monitor arms for my monitors. I've got 2 desk-mounted LED light panels with a remote. I've got a new camera mount for my camera. I've got a whole backdrop that I'm building. It's a lot, and it's all here. And I can't do anything with it because it's in the same room that the bathroom renovation's going on, and so there's just junk everywhere. And I can't wait to just get one of the projects done so I can shift to the next one because I want to have that done before moving into the next big phase of broadcast that I'll be working on, pun intended. Wink, wink.
Yeah. I actually you mentioned the standing desk. I love my standing desk. I got one a couple months ago, and it really helps out with my back when I'm standing up more often. At first my legs were tired. Because I'd be standing all day at my computer working, but it's been fantastic. It's a button that makes it go up and down. And I don't know if you knew, but you can see right here, I basically bought some 7-foot unfinished doors. So I just bought the frame that goes up and down and attached the door to this. So it's this massive desk. And
I think it'd be a little bit less door looking, but I'm all for it because the desktops, dude, they can be so expensive. I actually have grand plans to have a built-in wireless charger for my phone with wood-burned logo that shows you where the phone's supposed to go.
Yes,
I'm gonna get real into it. I'm gonna recess the Logitech PowerPlay mouse mat that charges the G703 I have into the desk, so I can just lay my cloth pad over it, and you won't know it's there, and my mouse will always be 100% charged.
That's sick. That's the great thing about being an adult. You can do whatever you want. You can dream up whatever you want. It's great. There's other parts that suck about being an adult, but that's the type of stuff where you get to have fun and do whatever you want. I love it.
Now, looking at the news and the way that things have been developing, last week we talked about upcoming roster changes, and we'll take a look at some of the roster changes we were looking at last week. One of them was the Nitr0 deal. That was supposed to be a thing. Nitr0 was supposed to be going to Mad Lions. That appears to have fallen through after Nitr0 himself said, nah. He just basically was not interested, despite the fact that they were in advanced stages. So it's kind of interesting. I'm just reading the article real quick. It even says, and we'll scroll down here so you guys can see it with us, that talks between the two organizations were at a very advanced stage, but the Swedish player turned down the chance to join the Danish team. He basically was like, I'm good. Thanks anyway. That's rough.
Yeah, that's if you're the Mad Lions, you got to be a little upset about that. They've been starting to make a name for themselves recently. They had a solid squad, but if you're Nitr0, you've been on some pretty big name teams before. This might be a step down in some cases. I don't know how I'd feel about the Mad Lions other than kind of a little bit salty, especially considering it sounds like they were pretty far in those discussions and it seemed like they were pretty much ready to sign him. So now they have to go through the whole process of finding another player. Hopefully they had a backup idea or someone that they thought they would be bringing in. But yeah, that's a tough pill to swallow if you're Mad Lions.
So here's the thing, though. Realistically, looking at like them not signing Lekro, I'm more interested in the other side of this conversation.
Yeah,
and
this
the
is
other
spicy.
side of this is right here. So Astralis have released Jugi and have announced the Bubzkji signing. This is what we talked about last week. When we were talking about Bubzkji, I actually said I could see him joining Astralis because this dude was really good. In fact, going back in his career to his early days when he was playing on Fragsters, he played with players like Stone and Dragonfly and Refresh and those guys. I didn't even look at him as like the best player on that roster. Yeah, he was good, but like Stone for me was the standout because Stone was this crazy good young Danish player, the younger brother of Dragonfly, the AWPer for the team and the in-game leader. And out of nowhere, Bubzkji kind of made a name for himself and improved and improved and improved. And then on Mad Lions, he was like a star performer. So it was really surprising when he left the team or got benched. I think a lot of people kind of saw something like this coming, him joining a bigger team. So it's official. And it's kind of interesting, too, because he's going to be playing for the first time with someone who's been apparently, quote unquote, on the team now for months in Essetag.
Yeah, and hasn't played yet because of the deal that he had. What was the name of the team again?
So
Phoenix.
He was Fun Plus Phoenix.
Fun Plus
technically
Phoenix.
heroic.
That's right.
Yeah, in March, he committed verbally to the team, but he couldn't play until his contract was over. So July 1st,
it was like 3
he
months or
officially
something
signed,
like that, right?
but I don't think he's actually played a single official match with Astralis yet.
Yeah, and that team is getting real weird, man. I mean, this was like a titan of CS, and we haven't really seen them play a ton recently, so they could still be up to par. But that's a tough thing to get back to, the level that they were at. So I'm really interested to see how they integrate these players. They still have the other big name players attached to them, but they're obviously going to be rotating some of these newer players in, and Essetag and Bubzkji. Which roles do they take? I mean, there's probably going to be some obvious ones where the player styles match, or they play these specific positions where they can plug them in. But I'm really interested to see what the end product is. I like that Astralis is innovative. They come up with this, extra player that they'll have on their roster, maybe 2 at some point. They had the extra 2. So I love that they're innovating and coming up with new ideas to continue to be as good as they are. It's just, we need to see what the result will be after they've made those changes to see if they're a smart idea or not.
I mean, the weird thing is Device and Dupree and Magisk are all playing, but Zipnix and Glaive are still technically on leave. How long is that going to be a thing? Like, how long are they going to go on leave? Let's say this roster starts working out really well. Do they just stay on leave forever? Like, I don't understand.
Can you imagine that?
The end game. Like, do they just say, okay, like, this is working out. You guys are free to, like, just retire if you want. It gets really weird after a while. And the thing is, they've been on leave for a while now.
Yeah,
so
I haven't seen them
now.
play
Like, they've been on leave for a while, and now Essetag's coming into the roster and Bubzkji. So how much longer are they anticipating these players being on leave? Or is there going to be a grander scheme with the roster? Are they going to have like, oh, he's our overpass player? And like, it's more like the Overwatch League where players sub in and out in a series. As long as the rules allow it, which a couple of TOs were entertaining the possibility of that following basically, or actually was preceding this. Right before Astralis, and we had talked about this on an episode of the show a while back, right before Astralis announced this roster, a couple of TOs started changing rules that would allow mid-series substitution, not mid-map. So, like, once a map ends, you could sub.
That would be so good for you.
And honestly, like, I kind of want to see that, but at the same point in time, how would Valve feel about this? Let's say Astralis makes it to the major, as they rightfully should, and we're back on LAN. How does Valve allow a 7-player roster? Do they? Don't they? Because one of their big things for a while with the coaching system was, oh, we want to make sure that teams have the same level of accessibility as, or like aspiring teams have the same level of accessibility as the pro teams. They started making rules around the majors based around the aspiring team. So like coaches not being able to talk mid-round, coaches not being able to be the in-game leader. That having a 7-player roster is not really something that a small org can afford. So I'm kind of curious to see what happens when it lands in Valve's lap.
Yeah, it seems like Valve is really just trying to take away the competitive advantages these large organizations have the ability to use, as you mentioned, having a coach.
Unfair
Not all
advantages.
teams.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Teams aren't. Not all of them are going to be able to afford coaches to have two extra players on their roster, and it seems like Valves want to make sure they can even the playing field as much as possible. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what their decision on something like this is. I imagine there's probably going to be a little bit back and forth in terms of at least the major. But yeah, I just like that we're getting some changes in the rules and the ideas that teams are putting together on how they can improve. Because in my mind, CS is pretty stale. It's the same stuff over and over again. It might just be because I've played so much CS and I've been involved with CS for so long that I need something new. Like add a rocket launcher to the game. Like do something, please. I know people are going to flame me for that, but just literally anything.
Please don't do that. Whatever you do, just ignore Mitch. He's crazy.
Do
we
it.
don't need a rocket launcher. We
Take out the chickens and add a rocket launcher.
We didn't need a battle royale either, but they gave us that. So they might actually be doing this. So shh. Definitely.
Yeah, don't listen to me. Don't actually do that, please. As much fun as that would be for like a weekend or something.
It would be fun for like 20 minutes. Like just exactly the same as Drop Zone was for me or whatever the heck they call it anymore. I honestly have forgotten the name of the BR that was released with Counter-Strike simply because I think I've played it like maybe twice.
We played it on LAN, and that was all I did. We were at the Global Challenge. Remember, it came out the same day we were casting. We all rushed to a computer.
Yeah. And it was terrible, honestly. I was like, this kind of sucks. It's not that fun. Anyway, moving on to the final piece of the show. And this one's also a big one. This has got to get zoomed in a little bit more so you guys can see this a little bit easier. Let's fix that. Boom. Liquid co-CEO, confirms imminent changes. So the North America's organization chief says that further updates will be provided soon. So the rumor was going around that Nitr0 was being removed and Grim was being added to the team. It's pretty much all but confirmed at that point. The question is, all right, so Nitr0's being removed. Nitr0's been on the team for a very, very long time. In fact, I'm going to pull up here in a separate tab the Liquipedia page for Team Liquid, just so we can look at join dates and leave dates. So Nitr0 joined the team in 2015, January of that year. He is the longest standing member of the current roster. The only one close to him is Elige, who joined 2 months later, and is potentially another player that I would look at as like maybe he'll go somewhere else too. Because the team is looking to revamp. And it's not that Nitr0 and Elige were necessarily terrible players, because Elige has actually had great games at times, been playing really well for Liquid. The point is more like, okay, we have given this project enough time, and it's not producing success. We have to make bigger changes than maybe we would like to do. And that's what they talk about in this.
Yeah, and I really liked watching the arc of Liquid with Nitr0 involved with it, because if you remember, and I'm sure you do, but I guess the viewers, if you remember when Astralis was Dignitas, they really struggled to get to those final matches and then end up winning them. They were second a ton of times, but then they got a mental coach that came in and really helped them out, and that got them over the edge. So they started their run where they were starting to win tournaments. And for a while, that was Liquid after the original Astralis team that struggled. They didn't place first for a ton of matches, but it was clear that they were a really good team, coming second place, third place at some big tournaments. But then eventually they got to the point where they were starting to win these tournaments, and they had that really great year recently. And, I guess since then it started to go down a little bit. I think some of it has to do with them playing online. Obviously you have to make those adjustments to online if that's the only places where matches are happening. But I think a big part of that was Nitr0 and his in-game leading. He can certainly frag, but I think the biggest impact he has was as an in-game leader, and he's got to be considered one of the best in-game leaders of all time for NACS.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely not a terrible in-game leader. The role has been passed out of his lap, and it's returned to him at times. You've seen it jump around on the team as he's focused on his individual play, but the team's kind of needed him to come back to that role at times. Looking at the roster currently, the two top performers are Elige and Twists. So you'd like to think that Liquid would want to build around them. But again, Elige is the one that's been with the team the longest outside of Nitr0. So if they were really looking for a full revamp and maybe just kind of hitting the reset switch, there's a possibility. I don't think it's likely, but they also more recently signed Stewie, who's been struggling. When you look at him, his statistics with the team are worse almost than Nitr0's. So,
which is surprising.
Yeah, like both players kind of were on that chopping block. Stewie averaging a 1.03 HLTV rating. I think this is actually across his career, not just with the team, but 1.03 across his career with the team, or across his career, 0.68 DPR, 79.3 ADR. When we look at Nitr0, 72 ADR, 0.68 DPR, or 66 DPR, 1.0 rating. So really not that far apart from one another. Their ratings are basically nearly identical. And I think if you actually look at their stats with the team, they match up even more evenly, or potentially even in Nitr0's favor. The question is now, though, what next? In both regards, like, do they move another player off this roster? Because I feel like one is never enough of a change. One player doesn't make that drastic of an impact. And even though Grimm will be a great player, great rifler for the team, I kind of wonder if they're looking at some of the guys from like a team like Chaos. They're like, okay, do we give this kid Leaf a shot? Do we give Zeba a shot? Like, as much as people are talking about, oh, these guys are cheating, and we've already talked about that. If Leaf is really a solid player, do they go for a gamble pickup on a guy with less experience and hope that it works out? We've seen instances in the past where that didn't work out, looking specifically at Cloud9 and Tens. But
I don't know how that didn't work out. Tens is insane.
He's really good.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
And then also, what's next for Nitr0? Like, does Nitr0 keep playing, or does Nitr0 just decide to retire? My man has made enough money at this point playing the game between salary and prize winnings that he can just step away.
Yeah, I feel like there's still plenty of money on the table for him to be made.
Oh,
I can't imagine he's going to be retiring here, but as you mentioned, it certainly has the ability to do so if he wanted to. They've won a ton of prize money. They're getting that sweet liquid money, which I'm sure is really nice.
Oh, yeah. It's a lot.
But, like, where do you go after leaving liquid? Like, that's a pinnacle of NACS, Like, I mean, the options have to be at the top tier teams. If I'm Nitr0, I don't want to go to kind of a development team. So, Cloud9, that could be an option. So I'm curious to see where he lands and just kind of where Liquid goes from here. Who are they going to pick up for their team from one of maybe the development teams? Or are they going to poach it from maybe a Cloud9 team, pick up Floppy or something like that, get a little crazy? I can't imagine C9 would be interested in doing that, but if the price is right, maybe they can make that work. But it's clear, I think Liquid did need to make some changes, because their goal as an organization as big as Liquid is, their goal is always going to be number one. They don't want second place. They want first place. So if they think they have a way to ensure that, or give them the best chance to get first place every time, and changes are necessary, they're going to do it. So, I'm sure there's a whole bunch of people working on scouting other players that might be a good fit. And, selfishly, I love watching roster changes and the shuffle during the player breaks, but on the back end, there's people on the other side of it. They're the players that are either losing their job, or there's some sort of adjustments that are made to their life that, makes it difficult for them. So clearly selfish for me, loving to see all this movement. But, at the same time, you got to remember, other people's lives are being affected by this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Just so you know as well, Nitr0 in his career has won $920,000.
Ooh, baby, and that's just winning, right?
Alone, yeah. Now, of course, that's across several years. That's prize pools tracked by esports earnings going back as early as 2013, when he won a whopping $270 from 2 events. So
big money.
You could see the drastic upswing. Obviously, the team was doing really well for a while, but it sort of tapered off. They've been supplanted at the top in North America by EG. Looking at teams they could even go to, though, like, he's not going to go to EG. I don't think they're going to make changes. They're not going to bring in an in-game leader, and his stats don't necessarily make him a player that you would want to bring in as like a hired gun. Yep. So maybe Gen G.
I feel like it's got to be a lateral movement at a minimum at the tier of CS that he's currently playing on. Obviously, Liquid is at the top, or 1-2, but it's got to be a lateral movement. So the organizations you're mentioning, those have to be the targets.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to go down as far as like Chaos. However, let's not forget, Envy is currently gutting the roster.
Yes,
so
that's a good point.
There is a possibility, maybe, that they would go for that. That there would be a swing for Nitr0, and they'd try to build this crazy roster around him.
Isn't he a Texas boy too, if I remember right? Or am I crazy?
I don't think so.
Okay, for some reason I thought he was from Texas.
No, I don't think he's from
I was going to say that'd be a perfect
Texas.
fit.
I'm pretty sure he's a Southern boy, but I don't know if he's from Texas.
Oh, you might be right. Yeah, you might be right. Like Mississippi or Louisiana, maybe.
I don't know. It's hard to remember.
Yeah, either way.
Somewhere. He's from the United States, I can tell you that much. But just like looking at his options, the list is real short when you really look at his options. So I really wonder where he could even go. Or let's not forget, elephant in the room, Valorant. You see a lot of players step away. Would he be the first like big name CS player to transition across titles? Honestly, probably not. If anyone was going to do it, I could see it maybe like if, let's say Liquid does cut ties with Elige for whatever reason, even though I think that that's a little bit far-fetched. Again, just mentioning the fact that he's been with the team the longest. He's the one who's played the most because he's played in some of these invitational events, and he is really good because his mechanics are just insane. Do I think that's realistic? No, because right now, even though you hear people talking about the money going around in Valorant being really high, it doesn't even come close to what guys in Counter-Strike are making. So
the top tier.
I think it's incredibly unlikely.
Unless it's somebody that has a huge social following where the return on investment and pushing up the salary, convinces these teams to give them, at least close to what the CSGO guys are getting paid. But
I mean, his salary would get cut like in a third almost, maybe a quarter. Probably. That's how much money he's making. Like these guys are making so much money. People don't even understand how much money is getting thrown around at the top levels.
It's like what, 25, 30K
a month? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Insane.
It's a lot of cash. So why would you go back to making like 6 or 7K when that was what you made? That's what like maybe some semi-pro teams are making. Like that's probably what guys on a team like Envy or Triumph were making at one point.
Man, I wish I wasn't old, man. And they had this kind of money when I was actually good at CS. That would have been fantastic.
Yeah,
but it's funny to watch on Twitter. There's actually some players that switched over to Valorant that are like trying to get Nitr0 to come into Valorant and just saying, hey, welcome to Valorant, man. So, it's a possibility, but, that is going to be a dip in earnings, that's for sure. But, I mean, it could be a new game for him to conquer. And also another thing we can think about, he could be a coach in CS if he doesn't want to play.
So here's the thing with that. I don't necessarily think all players can just transition to coaching. That's something that a lot of people will say, like, oh, yeah, you could coach, and he could be a coach because he's an in-game leader. It doesn't necessarily work that way. You have to have a coach's mindset and the ability to be a coach, and it doesn't always translate. Just because you were the shot caller for a team doesn't mean you have the ability to teach other people how to play the game.
And manage their personalities, too.
It's for the same reason that, like, not every retired athlete becomes a coach or an analyst or a commentator or anything like. They don't all go that route because they don't necessarily have the skill sets for that. Even if they were the best player in the game, they don't necessarily have the skill set for that. So I don't know, maybe he would go that route, but I don't think his career is twilighting at that heavily. I don't think it's like time for him to hang up the mouse and be like, I'm coaching now. I actually could see him taking a break from the game for a while. He's married. He probably wants to just kind of kick it, relax a little bit. The life of a top tier CS player isn't all that glamorous. I know that people like to make it out to be amazing because A, they get paid stupid amounts of money, which is true. B, they get to play video games for a living, also true. And C, they get to travel the world. What you don't realize is they don't really see that much of the world they travel through because they're mostly inside playing video games.
They see the hotels.
Yeah, this is something that casters will talk about too. You're mostly in a hotel. You're usually not in the city that's advertised. So, like, let's say they're like, oh, it's in Dallas, Texas. Like, chances are you're in a suburb. That's usually how it goes down. A lot of these events are, like, off. They're in, like, some, I wouldn't say nowhere town, but, like, not in the major metropolitan area. So
most people probably haven't heard of.
Yeah, so there's not as much to do. It's still fun. Like, there's still stuff to go do, but it's just not as much. And then you have limited time, so half the stuff is closed by the time you're finished, and that's just the way that it is.
And you're exhausted by that time too,
And the other side effect of
go out, grab a beer, and then go to bed.
you're traveling so much that you never see your loved ones. So like family, friends, spouses, kids, these guys are constantly on the road. And it gets to a point where you don't want to see the world anymore. You just want to see your house.
See your bed, man.
Yeah, like you just want to be at home, be comfortable. Think about how many times you've like gone on vacation, and sometimes, even though you're sad the vacation ends, you're thrilled to just be back home. Like it's just nice to be in your own home and like lay down in your own bed and be like, ah.
That would be the worst part for me, is the travel and not being able to be at home on a regular basis. Because these guys are going like literally week after week, and that's a big part why the player break came up, is because people were just exhausted from traveling so much.
Yeah.
And not only being exhausted, but as you mentioned, you don't see your family, you don't see your friends, you don't get to lay in your own bed and kind of do what you do on a day-to-day basis otherwise. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Even just maintaining a normal relationship. Not necessarily like boyfriend girlfriend type stuff. I'm saying just a normal relationship with a human being, a friend, whatever, is almost impossible for a lot of them because you're never home. And then that's the final side effect is, they always say, oh, these guys make so much money playing video games. One, they play the same game all the time, and it's got to get boring. I'm sorry, it does. No one loves the game
8
so
hours
much
a day
that they can play it that frequently and not get tired of seeing it. Because then when you're not playing, you're watching VODs. And when you're not watching VODs, you're watching streams. And you're getting interviewed. And you're being, like, it's just, after a while, it's like, okay, I just want to change of scenery. Like, imagine working in a cubicle, but you don't get to leave the cubicle. And you're there for 10 hours a day. And then you have your own door in and out. And all you ever see every single day is that same cubicle. Over time, it's going to drive you nuts. It's just natural. So, especially when you lack social interaction with people because you're constantly on the road and the only people you really hang out with are other players and your teammates. The final thing, though, is people always bring up the money. Yeah, sure, lots of money. But what do you spend it on?
Yeah, you're spending it on...
Really?
You're not home to really do anything, so
Exactly.
It's basically spending it on things that are going to make like your life easier on the road. Like you'll find some really nice set of luggage or something that you can set up your configuration of your suitcase really well.
Shoes
like
and clothes,
stuff like that.
Shoes and clothes. Yeah. You buy a nice car, you're never home to drive it. You buy a nice house, you're never home to live in it. A lot of these guys are spending their money on just like what I would consider perishable goods, which is basically just like fashion stuff. As much as that isn't, like, realistically, those shoes are going to be out of style in a year, so they're just going to buy new ones, or they're going to thrash them, or they're just going to sit in a closet because they're going to replace them with 12 other pairs. They're just spending their money that they're making on silly things, not because they think it's smart, mostly because they have nothing else to spend it on. They have a
think about renting an apartment. You're never there. Why? Yeah. Unless you buy, or the team provides you a house. Yeah. That's $15K down the drain, or whatever your payments are.
A lot of these guys are buying houses. So a lot of the players are buying houses because why wouldn't you? You have all this money, you might as well. So they're buying property, but they're never there. So some of them buy property and just rent them. I know a few players have rental properties, which is also really smart investment for the long term. Others buy the house, and then some of them like don't even have any furniture really in them. Like, look at a team house. Look at the team house tour. Go to watch some of the old team house tours from like 2018, 2017, when a lot of teams were doing one team house for all the players. It's a mattress on the floor with no box spring. There's no sheets, and there's just a quilt on the bed, and then a desk in the corner. And the desk is all super nice and ready to go, and then the bed is just a mess. And that's all they have. All their clothes are usually just laid out on the floor or in a box.
Pizza boxes everywhere.
Like, that's just not like, it's not something that's valuable to many of the players because they don't get to use it very often. And I think the same goes for like tier 1 casters. Like, they're like, having a nice home is tough because you're just never there to experience it. I'd say maybe in the case of someone like Nitr0, it's different because he's got a wife, so she's at home, and at least she's there to obviously experience what he's bringing in. But I'm sure there's been conversations with him and his wife as it's gotten to this point, and she's probably like, man, it's gonna be nice to just have you home for a couple months and just have time. I imagine that's really tough.
That's got to be, she's got to be thrilled about it. That's a big life change, and I'm sure she's made a lot of sacrifices to enable him to do what he does. So, she's going to be able to enjoy him for a while, but, between now and whatever he decides he's going to either get back into CS or, moves on to whatever he's going to be doing.
Well, that does about wrap things up here for the show, guys. Thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast. My name is Bach. Joining me on the show is MagicHelmet. If you like what we do, we are live every Friday at noon for Doorstock. We talk about the world of Counter-Strike. Sometimes we dabble into the world of Valorant, as there is a bit of crossover currently, but we try to keep things focused as much as possible. If you like it, make sure you follow us on social media. It's Nerd Street Gamers, NERDST Gamers on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. It's the same on YouTube as well. MySpace, yeah, LiveJournal. I'm trying to think of old social media networks, but I honestly can't think of any more than the ones we just mentioned. But you can also you can subscribe to us on Twitch if you'd really like. You can follow us on Twitch. You can subscribe to us on YouTube if you want notifications there, as we are live there. And we are also live on Facebook currently. If you guys are there, say hello. We do appreciate you stopping by. Hopefully you guys will join us next week. Take care.